Hello and welcome to episode 1 of Destination Duna with me, your host, 3 Martini Launch. What I'm going to do on this series is satisfy a challenge that from the KSP forum issued by Sturmsteiger. Is basically to establish a permanent habitation on the surface of Duna. He's got a number of rules and whatnot going into that, and we'll talk about those coming up. Right now, I want to show you the ship I'm going to be launching today. And let's see as it loads up here. Okay. I'm going to disconnect right here and bring a mech jet to show you some vehicle info. Anyways, I'm launching two space station cores today. And I figure to make a permanent habitation on the surface of Duna, I'll need certainly a space station in orbit around Kerbin. And I'm going to be making a Kethane mining operation on the moon to provide fuel for the mission. So I'll need a space station around the moon. And then, of course, there's the pusher. The space station core, starts up here at the top, goes down to about here. That's one core. And then the second core, mirror image, coming from here down to here. And again, these are just space station cores. I will eventually add additional modules, notably fuel storage and habitation. But for now, I'm going to get these up into orbit, or around into Kerbin orbit and moon orbit. We've also got the pusher. Lots of fuel going on there, and a single LVN atomic rocket engine. I figure I'm probably going to only be using 10-15% of fuel in this puppy, and I'll probably press it into service, permanent service as a pusher in between the moon and Kerbin. Now, who knows? I might even wind up sending it to Duna. It certainly has enough fuel to get there, and I'm sure I can push this whole package to Duna. In fact, let's take a look at the Delta V stats. 4,700. So what? Getting injection is going to be 1,000. Injection, mostly free because you can aero brake. So yeah, this one I wouldn't have any trouble getting into say Duna and I-Corp with this very launcher. And in fact, I might do a mirror image of this one when I need those those stations. But anyways, we're just worried about Kerbin and the moon today. You can see it weighs in at 24.4 tons. One of the limitations or stipulations of the challenge is you have to use the same lifter for every launch. I'm choosing a 25-ton lifter. If you do the challenge yourself, of course, you can choose whatever size lifter you want, but you have to use that size lifter for every single launch. Bigger the lifter, the less often you can launch it. So I'm going 25 tons. You can exceed its lift capability under special circumstances, assuming the payload itself can do the rest of the pushing to get it up into orbit. But I don't have to worry about that here. I'm under the 25 tons, so I'm good to go. So I'm going to rehook on that lifter, and my lifter was I was going to say inspired, but more than inspired by a gentleman named Temstar, who posted the Zenith family of launchers on the KSP forums. I'm sure you're all familiar with those launchers. Look up Zenith on the KSP forums. You'll see his family of lifting vehicles. He had a 24 point something or other ton lifting vehicle, and his are rated to get your payload to 80 kilometers, an 80 kilometer orbit. I've got a couple of issues myself with that one. I'm not that good of a pilot, so that even the one that says 80 kilometers, I couldn't quite do it. On top of that, I'm going with 125,000 meters, 125 kilometers rather than 80. So I needed a little bit more oomph than the 24 point whatever ton lifter offered. Temstar also had a tutorial on the forum of basically how he goes about designing his lifters. So I went ahead and followed that, made myself a 25 ton lifter. Rather than assuming I was going to get 15 or 16% of the total mass of the launch into orbit. Again, I'm not quite that good of a pilot. I'm with 14.5%. And with the test payload, turned out the lifter was entirely adequate to get 25 tons into 125,000 meter orbit, and still have enough fuel left to deorbit. And deorbit is important. I've set my debris persistence to permanent, and I'm hoping to not pollute space with any debris. So anyways, we've got the 2 space station cores, we got the pusher, we got the lifter, and I'll go ahead and get to the launch pad and switch to post commentary. I'll see you there. All right, welcome to post commentary. Here I am doing the launch. First thing I'm setting up is the Kerbal alarm clock to if you got a seizure from that, sorry about that. Anyways, setting up a Kerbal alarm clock took me 10 days. I'll tell you about that in a second. Anyways, the challenge I'm working on is called the Duna Permanent Outpost Mission Architecture Challenge. And actually, the challenge is to plan the missions, not actually to execute them. You get more points if you execute them, of course. But if you just plan it, you just say, "Here's my plan," you get points based on that. I'm doing it kind of in reverse. I'm not doing a plan. I'm just launching missions one after the other. Now, obviously I'll have some idea what I'm going to do next mission. Mission after that, 2-3 missions into the future. But the mission I do isn't going to be set until I actually do the mission. Anyways, the challenge basically gives you points based on 500-day and 1,000-day milestones. How many Kerbals you have on the station, 1 man day is worth a point or something like that. Anyways, I'll read the challenge. The link will be in the show notes. Let's see. The big restriction on the challenge is the lifter. You do have to use the same lifter time after time, and the size of the lifter determines how often you can actually do a launch. I've got a 25-ton lifter, so I can do a launch every 50 days. If you had a 10-ton launcher, you could do it every 20 days. If you had a 35-ton launcher, every 70 days, and so on. Regardless of the size of the lifter, you can do your first launch happens on day 10, and that's why I use the Kerbal alarm clock. Another challenge for the challenge is habitation. Assuming any Kerbal's going to be in space for more than 10 days, he requires double the amount of space a normal Kerbal takes. So a 4-man hitchhiker can hold 2 guys for an extended mission, 10 days or longer. There's also a supply rule in effect. It's used with fuel. 1 unit of fuel gives 1 unit of supply for 1 Kerbal for 1 day. That's food, water, oxygen, parcheesi, what have you. Fuel for any other purpose. You've got to lug around a full fuel tank for the supplies. There's a rule on infrastructure. They'd assume they had some kind of single stage to orbit or space shuttle or something that can get Kerbals from the surface of Kerbin into low Kerbal orbit for free. Basically, you didn't have to use any of your launch ton budget for that. I've got a small quibble with that. Assuming you're going to Duna, you're going to have a much larger infrastructure, perhaps up to and including a colony in the moon, or even a Kethane manning operation, which I plan to have. Now, assuming you already had that in place, isn't fair to the folks that go all stock. So what I'm going to do is just say that everyone in Kerbin sphere of influence, I don't have to provide a supply. I'm just going to assume my infrastructure covers giving food and water and whatnot to those folks. Yeah, you can see her on screen. I've just detached the last. It's already over. Detached the last section of the lifter and deorbited it. Again, my debris persistence is set to permanent, and I'm hoping to not have any debris left over, from any of my launches or whatnot. I'm using some mods on this one. MechJeb, you may have noticed already. You can see, what I've got to set there on whatever prograde or something or other. Anyways, I used to be a Puritan. I just would add nothing but pure stock. I did eventually add MechJeb and used it for the Delta V stats and thrust to weight ratio and whatnot. I guess in the VAB, but I take it off as soon as I before I left the VAB. But I've since come to embrace some of the features, mainly the Smart ASS, which you've already seen me use here on screen. Most of the ships I'm going to be launching here don't have a manned command pod, which means they have very little torque necessary to change their orientation. Now I can put my finger and rest it there on the D key for 3, 4, 5 minutes, but I'd prefer just to click on the pro grade button or the normal button or what have you, and have MechJeb just orbit my twist my ship. Everything you've seen happening here is happening at 4x, and it's still taking a bit of time to make those maneuvers. So I'm happy to let MechJeb do that for me. Also landing. I suck at landing, particularly on bodies with no atmosphere, and the moon certainly qualifies for that. On top of that, I can't land two things near each other to save my life, especially on the places where I'm good at landing. Duna, for example, it's got an atmosphere. I can set stuff down on Duna pretty reliably, but I just can't pick the location. MechJeb is pretty good at landing stuff where you tell it to land, so I'm going to use MechJeb for most of my landing operations. I'm also using the subassembly loader. I couldn't get by without it. It's since been discontinued, and the subassembly manager has taken its place. I hear it's not as good, but I've never tried it, so I don't know. Using the laser docking cam. I'm not using the whole laser source, so we'll see how that works out. Kerbal alarm clock, you've already seen that. I can launch, I got the 10-day launch, you've seen it in use already. I'll be launching at 50 days, 100 days, and so on. Plus, eventually, I'll have stuff going into, ejecting from Kerbin for Duna orbit. And I'll need the alarm clock to basically, you got to pay attention to this ship now, to that ship now, what have you. Hopefully, there'll be a lot of traffic going back and forth. Maneuver node improvement. Now you can see it in action right here. You can see that. You see that path right there around the moon. It's basically telling me what's going to happen based on my current trajectory. Without that, there's a way to get around it, but it's pain in the butt. You can do it very easily with the maneuver node improvement. Quantum fuel lines will allow me to transfer fuel from my mining operation on the moon and eventually on Ike to some type of fuel, a tanker that's going to land on the moon and suck up all the fuel. It's basically, if you imagine running just a fuel hose from one fuel tank to the other and transferring the fuel. It takes a Kerbin to attach the hose and do the transfer, so I figure it's a pretty good one. And of course, the kethane modding pack. I'll be using that one. I've recently added the I can't remember the name of it now. The one that the crew manifest, Kerbin or Kerbal crew manifest. Don't know if I'll be using that one or not, but it's going to be available to me. As I'm coming into lunar orbit right around here, I think I'm going to establish a 75-kilometer orbit, plus or minus. Don't know why. I just figured 75,000 was good. Yeah, probably should go down to 50,000, but I'll leave it at 75. And there I am with that. And let's go ahead. I could detach this space station, or the pusher, but why? Right now, it's got nothing else to do. It'll go ahead and stay there. We'll just change the rotation, pointing north, and basically to make it easier for anyone to land at. So that's where we stand now. I think I'm about done. So if you like the video, please like the video, and I'll see you again in 50 game days. This is 3 Martina Lodge out. Thank you.